Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Murat Gassiev is set to return to the ring at the end of the month at heavyweight for the first time. He'll be facing Kevin Johnson on October the 31st, he has confirmed on social media. And this follows some reports out of Russia from the Russian media about his return. So we'll get to his statement and then on to a few thoughts, because it's been well over 2 years since he last fought, and I guess there is a few questions. But his statement, see here on screen, this is translated. Dear friends, on October 31 in Sochi, I will hold a duel with a very experienced opponent, Kevin Johnson. For me, it will be the debut of the heavyweight champion. I invite everyone to the night of boxing. I will try to show a spectacular duel. So that is Murat Gassiev on his upcoming fight, which is just a couple of weeks away. So this is not unexpected given the news that's come out of Russia that he was going to be fighting on the 31st of October and likely to be against Kevin Johnson, but now officially confirmed. And I guess, what do I make of this fight? Well, it's not exactly the best opponent in terms of who Murat Gassiev could have fought, but I guess there's a couple of factors leading to this choice of opponent. One, the pandemic. I guess some of the options are a little bit limited. Some fighters are not sort of going outside of their countries where they might be holed up or subject to some sort of travel restrictions. And I guess the other thing to consider here is, after losing that final against Alexander Usyk a couple of years ago in the World Boxing Super Series, he's had such a long time out, and he's also had some injuries in this time, because this isn't the first time that a fight has been scheduled for Murat Gassiev, but it looks like this will be the first time since that loss that one is actually going to come off, because there were a number of occasions in 2019 in particular where he was announced to be in a fight against Joey DeVaco on DAZN in the United States, but it never came off for whatever reason. But there was also another occasion where he pulled out and said, look, I haven't had the proper preparations. The people that were arranging the fight hadn't actually given him enough time to have proper sparring and such. But then all of a sudden things drifted, and he's been out of the ring for well over 2 years now. So I guess Kevin Johnson, in terms of a comeback fight, I guess we could call this, in his first fight at heavyweight, not great, but it's not the worst. I mean, he could have gone for a much lesser opposition, but based on his name value and his skill set, probably Kevin Johnson was the furthest he could drop. And I guess they might also be hoping that given the recent win that Kevin Johnson had over the former cruiserweight Joan Pablo Hernandez, who made a comeback after 6 years out of the ring, maybe they thought, well, there's a little bit of intrigue there based on Johnson's last performance, stopping Hernandez in, 5 or 6 rounds or so. But for me, this is going to be a Murat Gassiev win. I do think that Kevin Johnson just doesn't have enough. He's over 40 now, and most of the recent performances that he has been, apart from the Hernandez win aside, he hasn't looked that great in. He is a guy that barely throws punches these days. He seems to shell up when he takes a bit of tastes a bit of power from the opponent, or if it becomes just a little bit too tricky, there's a lot of volume coming his way, he'll shell up, lay on the ropes, and fire back the odd counter. But often he just seems to survive and see out the rounds and take guys to a decision. And I guess in this case, maybe that's not a bad thing for Murat Gassiev, in need of some rounds. So Kevin Johnson could well take him some rounds here. Although Murat Gassiev, I think, probably does have the power to hurt and potentially stop Kevin Johnson. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is going to be a stoppage. But then again, I'm not necessarily expecting it. But I was reminded in that Hernandez fight that Kevin Johnson, when he lets his hands go, fires off combinations and looks to do a bit more than the odd counter. He can actually look quite good. He actually surprised me in that fight. So when he wants to, and especially if the opponent is flagging a bit, as Hernandez was, Kevin Johnson can still pounce and put it on you. But yeah, I'm not expecting that in this fight. I think it will be a case that Murat Gassiev will be pressing forward. He'll be looking to land body and head shots, a lot of power punches. He'll be working off the jab, and I think he's going to just put in a workmanlike effort, try to blow away some of this ring rust that would have developed. And I guess, we can't sort of exclude the potential of an upset, but I'm not expecting it. And I think Gassiev is going to win here, and it's probably going to be quite wide on the cards. I think Kevin Johnson, after he tastes a few decent right hands and maybe hooks to the body, is going to shell up, and he'll, maybe throw back the odd shot after that, but it'll be sort of survival mode stuff after that. So I'm not expecting any sort of spectacular war or, outstanding duel as Murat Gassiev is hoping for. I think this is going to be a case where it's just going to be a workmanlike effort. But it is good to have Murat Gassiev actually back in the ring. And this heavyweight first fight for him has been so long in coming. After Murat Gassiev and Alexander Usyk concluded that World Boxing Super Series tournament, high hopes for what they would be able to do in the heavyweight division based on what they'd been doing at cruiserweight. And at that point, Murat Gassiev was about 24 years old, and there was no shame to losing to a guy in Alexander Usyk, who was an Olympic gold medalist and widely regarded as a massive talent. He'd cleaned up the cruiserweight division. So I think people looked at Gassiev and thought, actually, he can still do well. Certain matchups are going to be in the heavyweight division where some of the talent, even in the top 20, are not, great movers, and sometimes they can be stationary targets, that he could be in some, good style matchups, have some fun fights and get some good victories. He's not a huge heavyweight in terms of his height and build, but actually in the past 2 years he has been thickening out. So, I'm looking at him thinking in some of his social media, he probably looks more about 230 or so now, whereas, immediately after, in the year or so after, he was looking 215, 220. But yeah, he certainly has got quite thick, and around the neck, you can just sort of see. And here's actually a little graphic I put up a little while ago. I think it was back in July, it was, or something like that. So, this is 2 years apart. So you can definitely tell that Murat Gassiev has acclimatized to the weight. And there are different stresses on your body being heavier and fighting at that heavier weight. So I think that, maybe that can explain some of the injuries, but there are questions. Has he lost anything? Has he lost a step? We've heard that there's been some injuries, chronic injuries perhaps. We haven't really had all the detail on that. So is Murat Gassiev the same sort of guy with the, really good punching power and just generally good skills, a little bit flat-footed, but, he is a decent fighter. And at 27, he's still, got a ways to go in his career. So if he's over the injuries and he's still, coming into his prime or somewhere there or thereabouts, I think he can be a fun fighter in some good fights. And this first fight against Kevin Johnson, I wouldn't read too much into it. It's getting a fight under the belt and then on to the next one. But what do you make of it all? Murat Gassiev returning to the ring end of October. And I guess the other thing, just before I go, it makes me wonder, whatever happened with the co-promotional deal that he had signed to fight with Matchroom on DAZN? Because you may remember there was announced maybe a year ago or something like that he'd effectively was leaving them, splitting off. But at the time, Eddie Hearn said no, he's still under his deal. And now all this time has passed since, obviously, the pandemic too, and he is going to be fighting in Russia, and this isn't on a co-promotional deal or anything like that. So maybe like a Michael Hunter, he's just been, because it's convenient, or maybe for cost, just cut loose. I don't know. Those details we just haven't been privy to. But drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.